Good evening and welcome to the first Tuesday Current Account. In the programme we talked to the Scots anarchist Stuart Christie, hidden away in Orkney for the last 4 years, and also to Labour's forestry spokesman Dr Gavin Strang, who later tonight at Westminster leads a debate on the crisis in the paper and pulp industry.
And later I'll be looking at the battle between the government and Scottish local authorities over staffing. The Scottish Office says there are too many local government employees, and that councils are hiring more staff in defiance of government pleas for spending restraint. The local authorities say it's their job to provide the services for which they were elected, and it's their business who they employ to do that job.
In the summer of 1964, a young Scots anarchist set off for Spain. In his rucksack, plastic explosive intended to blow up General Franco. His name, Stuart Christie. In the summer of 1971, the police in London arrested 8 men and women in connection with the Angry Brigade bombings, one of them, Stuart Christie. The summer of 1980, and a small publishing firm in Orkney caused a public outcry by putting out a booklet entitled Towards a Citizens Militia. It's been referred to the Home Secretary. The man behind this airmail publishing house and at the centre of the storm, Stuart Christie, now 34 and living on the island of Sanday, one of the most northern of the Orkneys. As well as a publisher, he's still Britain's best-known anarchist.
But the Christie saga starts not on Sanday, but in Spain. General Franco commanding his loyalist troops during the Civil War. Franco defeated the anarchists and their allies and went on to set up a regime which was everything that anarchists hate: repressive, authoritarian and capitalist. But Stuart Christie's attempt to assassinate the general was, by all accounts, including his own, naive and bungling. He was arrested with humiliating ease and sentenced to 20 years. But Spanish prisons did nothing to quench his enthusiasm for anarchism. On the contrary. When he arrived back in Britain 3.5 years later, he had renewed faith in anarchism, one of history's great lost causes.
I was very young when I went to Spain originally. I had come to anarchism via the Orange Lodge and the Labour Party and libertarian socialism, and it was very rapid progress, and my ideas hadn't been properly formulated. But after spending 3.5 years in prison with a whole spectrum of political of prisoners with different political opinions, my own belief in anarchism became strengthened and confirmed.
Back in Britain, Christie helped to set up the anarchist Black Cross to help political prisoners worldwide. He became part of the International Anarchist Network, and it was these connections that brought further trouble in 1971. Following a series of explosions at the homes of prominent figures, including Home Secretary Robert Carr, Christie was arrested and charged as a member of the Angry Brigade. The police claimed they'd found detonators in his car. Christie cried plant. In the end, and after spending 18 months in prison, he was acquitted. But the police, not surprisingly, continued to take a very close interest in his activities. And it was this close police surveillance, as well as some very unwelcome attention from Fleet Street's finest, that eventually convinced Christie it was time to move on.
The main reason we came to Sanday was I'd been informed by a senior special branch officer in London that if I remained in London, I would be framed, and this time more successfully. We moved from London to Yorkshire, and a similar situation was beginning to develop in Huddersfield, which led to the Persons Unknown case. And in fact, we only managed to escape involvement by a matter of weeks by coming to Sanday.
What has been the local reaction to you? I mean, there must have been a little surprised suddenly to find Britain's leading anarchist dropped in amongst them.
Well, in fact, people here are extremely friendly. They judge you for what you are, not for what the press and the media describes you as.
So you've had no adverse reaction?
I've had no adverse reaction. The people here, the Sanday people, and Orkneys in general, are among the friendliest and the most hospitable people I've come across.
And no doubt the people of Sanday think Stuart Christie's a nice sort of a fellow. He doesn't wear a big hat or a dark cloak or prowl around with smoking bombs. In fact, he rejects the widespread notion that violence and anarchism go hand in hand.
2 bottles of lemonade, please. And a bottle of grouse.
Some people might even find him disappointingly conventional. So what do anarchists believe in?
Well, the enemy, as far as I'm concerned as an anarchist, is any authoritarian organisation. We want people to actually think, take responsibility for their own actions, not to relegate authority to a party leadership or an organisational structure. Say that we are responsible for our own lives and we have the ability to take decisions for ourselves.
Why, though, do you think it is that anarchism simply doesn't seem to have caught on? There are very few people who believe in anarchism. Why is that?
Oh, there are quite a number of people. You'd be surprised at the number of people who do call themselves anarchists. The reason they're not readily noticeable is because anarchists do not believe in structured party organisation. They don't want people to actually come and swell the members of their particular party. But as far as I'm concerned, if you have one anarchist for 25 square miles, that's more than sufficient to extend anarchism into the everyday life of the community.
Well, in that case, Sanday, population 500, has rather more than its share. Colin Badminton lives along the road from the Christie household.
I just finished the artwork for the new issue of the Eagle.
He's also an anarchist, and the two of them collaborate over the paste-up of the Free-Winged Eagle, Orkney's own alternative newspaper.
The original layout is leading with the referendum issue for the uranium.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be okay, actually. Looks pretty good.
Looks really nice. And you're going to have
As well as a dozen or so books, mostly on anarchism, Christie's Cienfuegos Press also produces the Anarchist Review, an expensive and impressive publication.
And that's to go out
Yeah.
and do the rest by post.
Yeah.
He may not quite be challenging the barons of Fleet Street yet, but then Stuart Christie is no great respecter of Fleet Street and its methods. When he returned from prison in Spain, he'd experienced those methods at first hand.
Well, there'll be a lot of local interest in it. What they did, in effect, was create a monster, which is totally removed from reality. And that particular episode gave me a great deal of insight into, how the press operated, how Fleet Street operated. And I was quite horrified.
And you think that's why there was public hostility?
Oh, yes. Public opinion is created to a great extent. For people who have never come across me, they can only judge me from what they either see of me on the media or what they read of me through the national press.
And yet you do encourage publicity, don't you?
Well, the only way, no, not at that particular time, I had no alternative. I was newsworthy, but subsequently, I'm an anarchist propagandist, a publicist. We are into publishing, and our job is to get our material over to as wide an audience as possible. And the only way we can do this is by advertising or being newsworthy in some way. I just happen to have been the one selected by Fleet Street to be the most newsworthy anarchist because of my unfortunate past. It was very unsuccessful because I failed to kill Franco, and I failed in a number of other things, but that's by the by. So basically, Fleet Street selected me arbitrarily to be the spokesman for anarchism, which is why you're here today.
The fact is, Current Account and the rest of the media might have left Mr. Christie at peace in his Orcadian retreat, only he keeps getting himself involved in uproar of one kind or another. Most recently with this booklet. Useful bits of information like how to make a hand grenade or derail a train. A handbook for terrorists? Not a bit of it, he says.
Basically, the militia book is an extension of government policy, and I fail to see why a Conservative spokesman for defence should attack us, and the law and order lobby should attack us, particularly from the Conservative point of view, because basically what we're doing is we're encouraging people to protect themselves, thus removing some of the burden from the taxpayer. And I believe we could save £10.5 billion defence budget spending if the government decided to abolish the nuclear deterrent and arm the citizenry.
But hold on, I mean, that is a handbook on guerrilla warfare, isn't it? And it could surely be used here and now by people against their enemies, the state or the police or whoever, couldn't it?
Oh, it could quite easily, but we make the point in the book that the forces which make up society are very delicately balanced, and should they be upset in any way, then we could have a revolutionary situation in this country. We could have a counter-revolutionary situation. It can go either way. And basically we're saying that people should have the ability and the knowledge which to defend themselves.
But aren't you afraid that some people, not sharing quite your view of the state of society just now, might use this book here and now?
Well, if people are going to do that, they'll do it anyway, irrespective of whether this book is published or not.
But
the information in it is generally available, and people who are dedicated and who intend to do what you suggest, or the law and order lobby suggests they do, will acquire the information. In fact, the majority of them already do have this information and have had extensive military training, usually from people with a military background.
But if the information is already generally available, why publish the booklet?
Well, the information is available to a professional elite. It's not available to the man and woman in the street. This is the whole point of publishing the book in the first place, that the information here should... basically we're saying that self-defense shouldn't belong to a select minority of people.
How do you react to people who say you produced this book mainly to get publicity for yourself, for your publishing house, and for anarchism?
Well, the publicity angle was a welcome addition, because what we've been trying to do for a not inconsiderable period of time is to extend anarchism beyond the ghetto. I mean, we don't want to preach to the converted. There's nothing more self-indulgent than talking to people who already agree with you. What we want to do is take the idea out to people who never come across anarchist ideas.
That's all very well, but it leaves the establishment with a bit of a dilemma. To try to halt the flow of uncomfortable ideas coming on the wind from Sanday, but at the risk of creating a martyr. Or just ignore Stuart Christie in the hope that no one will listen to him anyway.
It would be very unwise to prosecute me for any of our publications, because all that would in effect mean is that the ideas and the propaganda are justified and that the state is moving towards 1984. They think that I'm going to wither and being out of sight, out of mind in Orkney, then it would be a wrong decision to make from their point of view. If they think that I'll just shut up and go away, they've got another thing coming.
Barr reporting from Orkney. There will shortly be